All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Rendon. I'm with the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and today I'm going to be giving a presentation on Japanese beetle in Oregon, touching on our trapping program a little bit, and also going into our 2020 eradication activities and giving you a brief idea of what we're going to be doing this year in 2021. Before I get into all of that, I wanted to just go over ODA's kind of organizational chart. It's a fairly large organization broken up into several different program areas. We are in the plant protection and conservation program area, and even within that program, it's also broken up into a couple different groups. We're in the IPPM group, Insect Pest Prevention and Management. So that's how you can see where we fit into the grand scheme of things. So insect pest prevention and management, the goals of our program is to protect Oregon's agriculture, natural resources, and residents from damaging insect pests. And we do this through a number of ways, mainly through early detection and rapid response. This is where we're monitoring for invasive species via our surveys and many different trapping programs throughout the state. So we're trapping for many different pests here in Oregon, and if we do find something, we often then have to do a eradication activities to hopefully eradicate that pest before it spreads throughout the state. In the little picture of Oregon, you can see how the state's broken up into different areas that we're trapping in. Right now, it's these 5 different areas. I think we might be combining some of these in the future, but just to give you a little idea of we trap throughout the entire state. So one of the main insects that we're always trapping for here in Oregon is the Japanese beetle. As the name implies, it is native to Japan. It was introduced in 1916 in New Jersey through, I believe it was iris or lily plants from back east. Since 1916, it's infested and partially infested over 37 other states here in the US. It feeds on over 300 different plant species, so it is definitely not picky. It likes to eat pretty much everything we like to grow. Our agricultural crops, ornamental plants, turf grasses, and some of our native species as well, it'll happily devour. Here's a picture of the Japanese beetle's life cycle. So right now, when I'm giving this presentation, I'm in April. So right now, the larvae are in the soil. They're beginning to chew and feed on the roots of different plants right now. Next month, they're going to pupate. That's where they metamorphosize from larvae into their adult stage. Usually around mid-June, the beetles here in Oregon will come out of the ground and begin feeding on plant leaves and flowers and vegetable crops. They'll mate, and the females will lay their eggs in the soil later in the summer around July or August. Those eggs will hatch into very small larvae. The larvae will eat the roots of plant species, and then as winter gets closer, it gets colder out, so those larvae move down a little lower into the soil column and aren't feeding during the coldest months. And then when spring begins again the next year, the larvae are getting warmer. They move up into the soil, begin feeding on the roots, and start that process all over again. And from this graphic, you can also see that both the adults and the larvae can heavily damage plants. Both the adults and larvae, feed on the roots or foliage of plants, so that's really bad for them. So some background, how can the Japanese beetle get into Oregon? Unfortunately, there's many different ways that it can get here. It can hitch a ride on cargo planes, long haul trucks, shipping containers. All of these things, the beetle could get inside those containers and get moved here. One of the main things we're concerned about is residents moving from infested eastern or Midwest states and bringing their outdoor plants with them here to Oregon when they move. this is how we think the current infestation in Oregon got here, is by someone moving their favorite, outdoor plants. Maybe they're sentimental plants from someone they cared about, and they brought them with them, of course. And there was larvae in that soil. The larvae came out, and now they're currently trying to establish here in Oregon. And we care about this because the Japanese beetle is a huge threat and concern to our agriculture, residential areas, and natural areas. So we have a huge nursery industry, orchard and field crops here in Oregon that are all in danger from being eaten by the beetle. Residential areas, so everyone's or most people's, personal yards, parks, golf courses, business parks, everywhere that there's turf grass and ornamental plants are at risk. And natural areas that are close by to agriculture or residential areas, we're also expecting to see damage in there as well. Wild roses, maple trees would all be targets from the beetle, or targeted by the beetle. These next few slides are just pictures of some of the damage the beetle can cause. So this picture is of a golf course somewhere back east, I forget the state, but you can see all of the dead and dying grass is because underneath that soil is hundreds of Japanese beetle larvae eating the roots and causing it to die. So as you can imagine, this can be a big problem for anywhere we have turf grass. The adults also cause significant damage. They do what's called skeletonizing the leaf. So the beetles like to eat the nice, soft, juicy bits of the leaf and leave behind the harder veins of the leaf. And so they devour all the soft tissue, and what's left kind of looks like a skeletonized, skeleton version of a leaf, which is the veins. And yeah, they can completely defoliate plants. Here's a picture of some linden trees at a park back east. Some of these trees, you can see it looks like maybe it's the fall because all the leaves are kind of turning brown, but actually this picture was taken at the peak of summer. You can kind of see some of the trees in the background are nice and green. The trees that are brown should also be nice and green at this time of year. It's not fall yet. This brown and the leaves being damaged is caused by the beetle, not the fall season. So as you can imagine, this is also not good to have all your trees become completely defoliated when they should be photosynthesizing the sunlight to grow and be healthy. Japanese beetle also loves roses. That's one of its most preferred host plants. Portland is often called the city of roses. We have our wonderful rose garden here in Portland, and unfortunately, it is extremely at risk if the beetle were to become established here in Oregon, because the beetles completely defoliate both the leaves and the flowers of roses. So because the Japanese beetle is such a threat to Oregon, we're always trapping for it. I believe we've been trapping for this beetle for like the last 60 years or so, and especially in 1980, the program really ramped up. So we do annual trapping. We place Japanese beetle traps at high-risk sites like airports, large cities, and commerce routes. In the past, we've done air cargo inspection. This is where we look for beetles on those air cargo planes and shipments. We're hoping, for the last few years, we haven't had the funding and resources to do that, but we're hoping to get that started up again as soon as possible to really help protect, our airport areas in Oregon. And if we do detect beetles, we then have our eradication plans in place. We've had several eradications gone on in the state in the last several decades. We almost always treat the PDX airport and sometimes Swan Island for beetles that are found there. Since the 80s, we've had 3 somewhat large eradications. I think 1 or 2 in Tigard and Cave Junction in the 80s. And these treatments involved both ground and foliar pesticide application. And yeah, this slide just kind of shows you the Japanese beetle trap and how it works. So we place something like 10,000 JB traps throughout the state every year. They mostly consist of these green plastic funnel traps. And as the little graphics kind of highlighting the lure that we use, it's two parts. The little white circle is the floral lure. So it smells kind of like an old kind of artificial bouquet of roses. So both males and females think, oh, this is a really good rose bush right here. I should go to it and start feeding on it. And then the little orange insert is a sex pheromone that smells like female beetles. So males smell that and they think, they should go there too to find mates. So they smell this lure, they fly and they hit the little green plastic wings at the top, and they fall down and get trapped in the little cup at the bottom, and they're not able to crawl back out. And then later on, our trappers can go to the traps and see what they've caught. So here in Oregon, we use these smaller little cups that are only like 3 or 4 inches in height. We do have a couple larger cups, but the vast majority of our JB cups are fairly small, about 3 to 4 inches in length. But back east, they have modified Japanese beetle traps where they connect the lure to garbage bag size containers, because some areas back east, they can literally catch millions of Japanese beetles in traps. So you need a very large container to contain all of them, and they use these garbage bag size traps. Oh, and here's a picture of what that looks like. This is I think a 13-gallon garbage bag placed in Iowa, and this was set out over only one day. So this entire garbage bag was completely filled up within 24 hours of being placed, and it's overflowing with Japanese beetle. And in the eastern states and Midwest where they have, Japanese beetle is established, this isn't the case in every state, in the summer all the time, but there definitely are circumstances that arise where you will find this many beetles in an area. So we definitely do not want this to be the future for Oregon. In 2020, we placed almost 11,000 Japanese beetle traps throughout Oregon. We also did delimitation trapping in Clackamas, Douglas, Multnomah, and Washington County, where beetles were found in the last couple years. So delimitation trapping is where we have a higher density of traps because we know beetles might be in that area. So we want to place out more traps to get a better idea if they are there and where they are. And specifically within the Japanese beetle treatment area, we placed 2,317 traps. So you can kind of see that the picture where the arrow is pointing to, there's a lot of traps in that area. And traps are generally placed about 250 feet apart within the treatment area. And that is kind of the goal, but it varies depending on the site location. Okay, so now just a brief, well, not too brief, an overview of the current infestation found in Oregon that we're currently battling. 2016 was a big year for ODA. We found 369 beetles in the Cedar Mill, Bethany area. At that time, this was the most number of Japanese beetles caught in any field season. So it was a huge amount of beetles. This population might have been there already for a year or two before we caught our first catch in 2016. So immediately the department initiated their eradication plan to combat this population. In 2017 was our first year of treating that area where beetles were found, and I'll get more into what the treatment actually means in just a little bit. And then in 2017, we caught over 23,000 beetles in that general and expanded area, which was a huge amount of beetles. It was quite startling. This is where we had to use some of those bigger cups because some of the smaller cups, the beetles would just completely overfill it. So it was quite disheartening to find that many beetles. 2018 was our second year of treating the area, and you can see it expanded to try to treat more area where the beetles were found. And a little good news, in 2018, we only caught a little over 17,000 beetles, which means the treatment that we did the year before did help knock the population down a bit from that 23,000 and then to 17,000. So some good news, but still quite a few beetles. 2019 was our third year of treatment. Again, the treatment area expanded. 2019, we also included a foliar spray. So before we'd only been treating the ground with a granular application, then we also decided to treat the high areas where we found the most beetles with an additional foliar spray. So we did all the ground treatments, and then in those smaller areas, we did a foliar spray as well, just trying to do a 1-2 punch to hopefully get down the numbers even further. And this did seem to work. We only caught almost 8,000 beetles in 2019. So again, further reducing the population. However, you can see that we caught many beetles outside of our treatment area, all those little red dots that are not within a blue polygon. So good news and bad news, reducing the population, but still finding them further and further away. 2020, last year, was our fourth year of treatment. We treated a large area again, and we did our second year of also doing the foliar spray as an additional measure. And last year we only caught 4,490 beetles, which is really good. It's really good to see that we're really reducing that population, but you can still see we are catching beetles outside the treatment area. And this slide just kind of summarizes all of those numbers. It's a lot to throw out all at once, but you can just kind of look at 2016 through 2020 and the beetles we caught just in the Cedar Mill, Bethany area. And our treatment, it's a 1 year staggered to see the results. So in 2017 was our first year of treatment, but we wouldn't know until 2018 how effective that treatment was, because it targets the next generation of beetles. The numbers at the bottom are the reduction we saw from the year prior. So 26% reduction, then a 56% reduction, and then a 44% reduction in overall beetle numbers. So this is great. We're heading in the right direction. We just have to keep a handle on the new beetles that we find spread out in that area. So now getting more into what the treatment means. So we use two main products for treating people's residential properties and commercial properties as well. The first one is called Acelepryn G. It's a granular soil treatment, and we use this for the main treatment areas. They look like little brown pellets, kind of like fertilizer, and we use that to treat turf grass and ornamental planting beds. And then the last couple of years, we've also started to use Acelepryn, which is the liquid formulation of Acelepryn G. And we use this only in the hot spots where we have the highest Japanese beetle numbers. And the soil application targets the larva that's in the soil, and then the liquid application targets adults that are actively feeding on foliage. The active ingredient in both of these products is called chlorantraniliprole. These products were specifically chosen because they're highly effective against Japanese beetles. They're considered a reduced risk insecticide, meaning it's extremely low risk for people, kids, pets, other wildlife, including pollinators. there's no caution words on the label. You might be familiar with many pesticides have a warning word like caution or danger or something to that effect. Acelepryn G and Acelepryn, because it's such a low risk insecticide, no caution words are needed. There's no restricted entry period, which means once Acelepryn G is on the ground, people can immediately walk on that ground as soon as it's on the ground. They don't have to stay away for any amount of time. We do recommend that people water their lawn before walking on it. That's to make it more effective, to get it into the ground where the grubs are, and also to be like an additional overabundance of caution if people are concerned about exposure. We suggest you water your lawn first, then it gets into the ground, and then you can walk on it, and there's almost no risk of coming into contact with the product. But even with that, it's unlikely that even direct exposure to Acelepryn or Acelepryn G will have adverse effects on people, kids, pets, and other wildlife. The EPA has a little fun factoid on their website. They say a toddler or small dog would have to eat 4 pounds of treated soil every day for 90 days before they would exceed maximum dose limits. So I know a lot of dogs and kids, eat a lot of crazy stuff, but even that I think is a tall order for a dog or child to do. Here's just some pictures of what the treatment looks like. We contract with General Tree Service. They are licensed pesticide applicators. They use belly grinders and push spreaders to apply the granular product, and then these long hoses attached to their trucks with water tanks to apply the liquid formulation. And we could not do this project without them. They are extremely integral to the success of this project, and they have a really hard job, and so we're extremely happy to be partnering with them. Here's just a couple of pictures of some of the residential areas, just kind of showing that what is at risk here in Oregon, at least for our residential properties. All of this in the picture, the turf grass, those ornamental plants are at risk from the beetle. So hopefully we can eradicate the beetle, and everyone's yards can still stay nice, and people's quality of life can be maintained. We also treat commercial properties. This is a hotel, I think, in the treatment area, and again, a lot of turf grass, so it takes a lot of work to treat all that. This slide, you might have already seen it before, but it's kind of special because there's something unique about this picture. And unfortunately, since this is a recording, I can't, take any guesses of what is special about it. But if you look at it, maybe you might notice something. All right, I can't really ask anyone live, but the answer is that they're all left-handed, which is really unique. It's either like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 chance that all 3 of them would be left-handed. So I don't know if that's something, if there's something to that, but I don't know, just kind of a fun picture. So in 2020, we did the main Japanese beetle treatment from April through May. We treated 12,000 different tax lots, which is a huge amount of tax lots to treat. We treated 6 schools, 8 parks, 3 shopping centers, and 2 golf courses. For the foliar application, we did that at the end of June, early July, and we do the foliar, we time it with the peak adult flight. So when the most adults are out there actively flying and feeding on plants, that's when we use the liquid application. And we only needed to treat about 800 properties last year. Another important aspect of the program is the yard debris quarantine. So we're treating all these different areas in the area, and we also have our yard debris quarantine, where if you're in a certain area where the beetles are in the highest number, you can't move plant material out of there freely. You have to either put it in your yard debris curbside bin, where it's then taken directly to Hillsborough landfill for deep burial. And this is because adults could be in that yard debris. And if it's taken to, throughout many different parts of Oregon, you could just be spreading the beetle that way. So by having it all go to one centralized location, we're reducing the chance that we're going to be having more areas pop up where we find the beetle. Also, yard debris that's produced, by landscaping activities. So there's a lot more yard debris that's created that can't fit in your curbside bin. We have landscapers take it to a designated drop-off site. Last year and this year, it should be Best Buy in town. So all the yard debris goes there, and then from there it's taken to Hillsborough landfill for deep burial. And the material that we're most concerned about is grass clippings, plants with roots and soil attached, sod, and potting soil. And things that don't need to go to this drop site are fall leaves, fill dirt, so dirt that's farther down in the soil column, and any non-plant material like rocks or bricks don't need to go to the Hillsborough landfill. So this year, as I'm speaking, is 2021, and we're doing our 5th year of treatment. I included the Bethany Cedar Mill area as well as the Portland area that we're treating this year. In the earlier slides, I didn't include the Portland area just to keep it simple, but this gives you the whole picture of what we're treating in 2021. Even though there's more areas to treat, it's actually roughly the same acreage size as what we treated in 2020. It's hard to see in this picture, but up in the Cedar Mill Bethany area, some of those areas we're not treating there because we didn't find beetles there last year in 2020. So this is why, even though there's many more areas, the acreage is actually similar. So we're happy about that. But again, we just really want to try to get a control over the spread that we're seeing. Oh, and this is a picture of the yard debris quarantine area. So here's all the treatment areas, but only this area in red is the yard debris quarantine. Oh, we also really try to emphasize or encourage people that, well, maybe not encourage, but we tell them they're not allowed to have, plant sales or plant swaps where they move plant material out of this area, which is we've been really trying to partner with master gardeners, and it's unfortunate that they cannot, do those fun activities, but for the time being, it's really important that plants are not moved out of there because they could have beetles in them, and that would just exacerbate this problem. So hopefully this will get a handle on this beetle and can eradicate it, and people can then freely do plant sales, but not for right now, unfortunately. All right, so that's a lot of information to throw at everybody, a lot of different aspects of the program, but either myself or someone else will be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for your time, and best of luck.